Lesson 10. The ladder. Okay, in this lesson, we will continue to learn the basic methods of capturing stones. In our previous lesson, we talked about the engulfing Atari shape, and we learned how to drive the white stones toward our own existing stones so that we can capture them. Now, if black doesn't have a stone right here, can black still capture this white stone? Well, let's give it a try. Black plays Atari here. White can only extend, and then black plays Atari again. Since white is constantly left with only one liberty, black can continuously play Atari like this, and white can only keep running. Alright, black, through continuous Ataris, has driven white toward the edge. Once we reach this point, white has nowhere to run, and black will capture all the white stones next. So, this is the ladder technique we are covering today. Let's look at this shape. First, the key point of a ladder. Please remember, the stones we capture using a ladder must start with only 2 liberties. Now, if a stone has 3 liberties, can we form a ladder? The answer is no. Please remember that to form a ladder, the stone must have exactly 2 liberties. Next, when we play a ladder, the first step is finding the ladder's direction, or the direction of the Atari. There is a rule here. After you play Atari, the opponent cannot extend to gain 3 liberties. Look here. If black has 2 directions for Atari, which direction is the correct one? We must firmly remember not to let the opponent extend to 3 liberties. So, playing Atari at this position is correct, because after white extends, it still only has 2 liberties. If I play Atari from this direction, after white extends, it will have 3 liberties, and the ladder will have already failed. Okay, let's see. When black plays Atari here, and white extends, for the next Atari, we still need to be careful not to let the opponent get 3 liberties, so we play Atari at this position. White runs out, but only has 2 liberties. We can test it. If we play Atari here, doesn't white get 3 liberties after extending? With 3 liberties, a ladder is impossible. Here, let's learn the correct mindset. First, when we Atari here, and white extends, the next move should be an Atari here, right? So white extends and still has only 2 liberties. But if we Atari here, once white extends, it gets 3 liberties again. Therefore, we must remember to play continuous Ataris, forcing white to extend with only 2 liberties. Okay, by continuously playing Atari downwards, like this, we eventually reach the shape I just showed, capturing all the white stones. Now, we'll notice that this shape has a certain rhythm to it. like constantly pressing down on the opponent's head while playing Atari forward. That is why this ladder shape has a nickname called turning the sheep's head. Visually, it looks a bit like we are pressing down on a sheep's head, continuously pressing it down as it moves forward. So it has this nickname known as turning the sheep's head. Alright, now that we've covered the key points of this shape, let's talk about when playing this ladder, the common mistakes that beginners tend to make. First of all, you must firmly remember not to let the opponent extend to 3 liberties. In reality, some students remember the shape of the ladder, roughly looking like turning a sheep's head, but they ignore the liberties. For example, after playing Atari in the wrong direction initially, they might still try to block here, trying to capture when the opponent turns. They will hang. When the opponent turns, they will hang again. But please note, white now has 2 liberties. The result of this is that as the opponent keeps running, because they have 2 liberties, the opponent can execute a double Atari. Then black's position collapses instantly. Because after being hit by a double Atari, it is obviously black who gets captured. Please remember the first rule. Never try to capture a stone with 3 liberties in a ladder. We must pay attention to the direction of the Atari. The second point you must remember is that a ladder requires continuous Ataris. In reality, it sometimes happens that while playing a ladder, you forget you are trying to capture the opponent's stones. For example, failing to play Atari on their liberties, or after playing a few moves. You forget to Atari and play a move like this instead. Then, suddenly, a double Atari appears again. So, the second key point of a ladder is to play continuous Ataris, not giving the opponent a moment to breathe. And the third key point, or the third common mistake, is playing Atari in the wrong direction. It is simple. If you Atari here, the opponent gains 3 liberties. So we must keep the key points in mind. Not only must we play continuous Ataris, but we must also ensure the opponent's stones never extend to 3 liberties. Just a continuous Ataris, ensuring that after I place my stone, the opponent has only 1 liberty. And after they place theirs, they only have 2 liberties. Firmly remember that the opponent cannot catch their breath. And this is how you capture them. So let's roughly memorize these 3 key points. All the areas where mistakes are easily made. First, do not try to use a ladder on stones with 3 liberties. On such stones, a ladder must only be used on stones with 2 liberties. Second, you must play continuous Ataris. Never go soft, halfway, and fail to take away the opponent's liberties. Otherwise, the opponent will escape. Third, pay attention to the direction of the Atari. We call this hitting straight. If the opponent extends to 3 liberties after your Atari, this shape is obviously not a sheep's head ladder. So to capture the opponent in a ladder, you must pay attention to the Atari direction.
Okay.
These are the characteristics of a ladder that you must firmly remember from the start. And that concludes today's lesson.